Whoa, well, there we go. That's how it is.
Quick.
Yep, easy come, easy go. Welcome to the jam in Condensa. We're gonna have an adventure. I will drop straight away into the chat our invitation for this first exercise, which is gonna be impromptu networking. And so you can start thinking and give yourself a head start. And that prompt is, what advice, counsel, or comfort would you offer the 5-year-old version of yourself, and why? And what would this version of yourself remind you of?
Hey Jeremy, hey Paolo.
Hi, Juan.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Waiting for people. I reposted the link in the umbrella channel.
And let me drop the invitation to our first exercise to you as well, Wonka. And so our first exercise is going to be impromptu networking, just going to be a series of one-on-one back and forths. And that question is, what advice, counsel, or comfort would you offer the 5-year-old version of yourself, and why? And on the flip side, if that's not enough for you, what would this version of yourself remind you of?
Hello, Finton.
Hello, everyone. How we doing?
Welcome. I am in a hell of a vibe, Fenton. So, as
Hell
you
of a
can
vibe. Yeah, look, jeez.
see, exactly. Right. I brought the game.
Damn, man, you got a bit of Barry White playing in the background, just to get us all in the mood.
Not quite Barry White. I think this is George Benson Reason. So, because of copyright, I can't play it for you as we record, but feel free to go to your streaming platform of choice and look up Reason by George Benson.
Maybe we could all just sing it together.
Yeah, there's no words, but it does have a melody. Right?
Fair enough. I will check it out. George who? Benson?
George Benson, Breezem. I will show that every day.
Fair enough.
Since we are trickling in, what we're going to do is get into our first exercise and a bit of a flying start. This is a thing that, yes, you in fact can do. And what we're going to do is jump straight into a series of one-on-one conversations around the invitation that I've dreamt up for you today. Pardon me. And that is, what advice, counsel, or comfort would you offer the 5-year-old version of yourself? And of course, why? And what would this version of yourself remind you of? So in this first interaction, you'll have a few more minutes, but we'll scale down to 5 minutes per interaction to get everybody into the vibe. So Finton and Bianca, I'm going to invite you right into the first breakout session. And in Condensa and Wonka, you guys can hang out and welcome folks into the vibe with me. As familiar faces. Nope. And actually, looks like Bianca on her iPhone may be having some sketchiness. So I'll actually invite you, Wonka, to jump in with Finton.
We have a new person, Sacred.
Hello, Sacred. We are already getting started. So once your audio is connected, you'll be able to drop into the vibe with us. We're jumping straight away into a series of different one-on-one conversations. We call this exercise Impromptu Networking. And my invitation or the prompt for you is, what advice, counsel, or comfort would you offer the 5-year-old version of yourself, and why? And what would this version of yourself remind you of? And I'm just going to invite you into a room where you can chop it up with somebody about that. Welcome, Renee.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, little human.
Shall we start?
Yeah,
As well?
for sure. So Renee, let me just make sure that you've got some context. We're in an exercise already called Impromptu Networking, and that's just going to be a series of one-on-one, back-to-back-to-backs. And so our question for this conversation is, what advice, counsel, or comfort would you offer the 5-year-old version of yourself, and why? And on the flip side, if that doesn't make your brain explode, what would that 5-year-old version of yourself remind you of as well? And so, what do you guys got?
Can I go? Because these are the kind of things like I've thought through all my life, right? If I was to say to my 5-year-old self now, and especially now because I'm also a mum, I would tell her that her mother's frustration and anger is not because she doesn't love you, right? Like, I understand much better now that I'm a mum that we can't always be the always loving, always embracing, always patient, best versions of ourselves. And now that I'm an adult, right, when you're a child, you expect your parents to be these perfect people that are always there for you. Oh, I know different now that I'm an adult and a parent.
Right, with the little human like
Should I also
crawling up
answer
the
that other
walls.
question?
Yeah, go for
Pardon?
it. Yeah, I said
Well,
now that
no,
you've.
I would be interested to hear your guys' questions. I wasn't sure on the format. Am I meant to answer both together?
No worries. It's just us here. So for me, it would definitely be some version of like, take it easy. Like, it gets better. Like, just hang in there. Like, this sense of comfort and just keep going. Everything works out in the end, so to speak. And you, Incandenza?
I have something very similar, like go for what you love, don't matter the cost, like whatever it takes.
There you go. I like that. There's some like very inspirational music in the background there. And
Enzo with us.
Cool. Ensign will be able to drop into the vibe. And the flip side, maybe we can just narrow down on the flip side of that. So what would the 5-year-old version of yourself remind you of?
Renee?
Welcome. I think you're on mute, Renee.
Yeah.
Or your mic is broken. Yep. Comms check is rough. Hey, Anson, we are in the midst of an exercise called Impromptu Networking. And we are just having what's normally a series of one-on-ones, but we're here in the main space. And so the question that we're grappling with right now is, what would the 5-year-old version of yourself remind you of?
Oh, he was a good little nerd. That was a happy, nerdy little kid. Holy crap.
So if you got to meet that happy, nerdy little kid, what would he remind you of? What would be his advice for you? Like, hey,
I think right now he'd be pretty stoked for me. Like, I think we'd be fine. Yeah, like oh, dude, you're still playing with computers? Fuck yeah. You know, like that was like, you know, because I'm 45, man, and I got my first computer. My old man got his first computer at the university in 1981, and it was awesome. It like blew my mind. And 40 years later, I still think they're like
Righteous.
yeah, it is kind of righteous. It's like, well, okay, that worked out all right.
Have a
Yeah.
sesh. Have a sesh.
Yeah.
And so we're under a pretty tight time bound. So Renee, what was the flip side of that for you? No,
You're still
you're,
mute.
you're still busted. We may never know. Incondensa, do you have an insight into what the 5-year-old version, what they would tell you?
What they would tell me? Probably the same thing. Like, you would tell me, don't listen to what they tell you.
Yeah, there you go. Fuck the haters for sure. That never gets old. Awesome, gang. So we now see who else is here with us. So we're already in the midst of this exercise, a bit of a flying start for this round of impromptu networking. Again, this is just 3 back-to-back one-on-one interactions. And our prompt, or our invitation, as we like to call it, for this exercise today is this question: what advice or counsel or comfort would you offer the 5-year-old version of yourself, and why? And on the flip side of that, what would this version of yourself remind you of? What would be the 5-year-old version of yourself, their advice coming back at you? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix folks up right quick and invite some new players into some new, more one-on-one-y spaces, and just get after it. On your mark, get set, change the time box. We're just going to have 5 minutes plus a minute kicker on the end. So be snappy and share time. And on your mark, get set, race. There we go. And let's see.
We're together.
Yep, we're here.
Okay,
looks like
cool.
Renee's sorted out. So
Sacred, you are supposed to join the breakout room. Number 1.
Yeah,
Let's go.
You'll have a new partner to jump into that, or you can hang out with me. We can mix it up.
Yeah, I can. Oh no,
Sacred is in the mix. So the part of the question we didn't get to was why. So why? Yeah. So the why thing is pretty heavy. So I had my fair share of what I've come to refer to as the so what's of life, like a not easy situation that many would call traumatizing. And so like digesting that stuff as a very small human being, I was totally outside of my capacity. And so that's really the cause, like being exposed to more work than a little brain can do, or should, not just can do, rather than an evaluative state. It's just not possible to contain a whole ton of emotion and whole lot of complexity and nuance when you're small. And so that sensation of like, hang in there, it gets better, and that sort of comfort of like, you can do it, is important. And what about you, Incondensa? Why?
Well, first of all, thanks for sharing that. I had the same, but it started when I was 13, not when I was 5. When I was 5 was still pretty decent situation. But when I was 13, it started the real trauma, let's say, as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, everybody gets their dose sooner or later. That's what I've come to definitely understand.
We can
the sen-
talk.
Yeah, for sure. The sense though for you, because I remember your bit was about it's a little hot for me, getting into too much fidelity on that. But the sense for you of like just go for it, that you said that you would offer your 5-year-old version. What makes that like the thing that you would really encourage yourself for at that point?
Oh, sometimes I gave up things that I really wanted to do. Like I was a foreign correspondent in conflict zones in Asia,
Okay.
and I loved that job. Really, it was amazing. And but I was working. That's just an example. I was working for an Italian magazine that didn't have many funds, a newspaper. So I had to do the jump if I wanted to continue and do the job in English. I didn't feel like could have been competitive because I was doing writing, of course, like in Italian, decently good, but and I felt now I cannot compete with people writing. I cannot compete in another language and stuff. And then I decided to not continue. That's one that I could tell you about love stories or other things.
Yeah. It's funny. I would like to box you into a stereotype. Like I feel like the Italian tragedy, right, is in there, right? Yeah.
Well, it was with this particular story was with a Croatian, so it was not a full Italian love story, but yeah, Italian were involved.
There we
And
go.
no, I was thinking that like people like that had some bad past experiences, most of that they end up doing what we do, like trying to fix stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it definitely becomes a motivating force in life in many different ways, right? It fuels a lot of compensation, and those can become our superpowers as well. So it's not all bad, but I can definitely dig that. Like, so that sense of like, no, man, like fucking go for it, fight for it, follow. Yeah, I feel that deeply in my bones. It's like, oh yeah, I crash quite frequently because I go for things. It's not always comfortable, but it's an experience and an adventure.
Did you learn how to give yourself the same energy that you are able to give to others?
I mean, yeah, for sure. Like, I think I'm out on the record on this, but for me, it's just about like finding the excitement about the possible future I'm most looking forward to, and then just sort of downloading that excitement about the possible future into the here and now, and then letting it move my feet. And so, boom, we got friends. Awesome.
Yeah, we got a party there.
Exactly. The gang's all here. So welcome back, gang. And so we are once more in this third and final act of Impromptu Networking, this series of back-to-back-to-back interactions. The prompt is probably familiar by now, but just to anchor it, our question is, what advice, counsel, or comfort would you offer the 5-year-old version of yourself, and why? And on the flip side, what would this version of yourself remind you of? What would be their counsel going back the other way? So I'm just gonna mix it up one last time.
Shall we shorten the time a little bit?
We do. It should be down to 5 minutes. So 4 minutes with a 1-minute kicker. And that should have us right in there. And in Condensa, I'm going to invite you to jump in with Sacred Oak.
Okay.
Let's see. And
nope,
we lost somebody. Anson, if you could just hang out with me. So ignore the prompt. We'll get going.
Cool, man. How are you doing?
There we go.
I'm gonna go with Bianca. She's a no.
Cool. That'll do. And Mati, are you here?
Yes. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Mati. We're in the midst of impromptu networking. Do you have a sense of, what the advice would be for the 5-year-old version of yourself?
Okay, I would say live life and don't take it too serious. Yes.
Don't take it too serious. And why, if you mind me asking, is that the thing?
I don't know. I just have this feeling that I have not been able to like enjoy myself because I take life so serious, I guess.
It's so funny. I don't hear it in your voice, but I have the sense as you say that I imagine like some scowling person taking life very serious. But
I do actually.
yeah. I can hear you smiling though, so you must find yourself in a happy zone. And that 5-year-old version of yourself, that was that a serious version of yourself, or?
Yeah, but yes, not really. But I think over time I have grown to like, take it seriously. Like I have to do everything seriously, my work seriously, my schooling and every other thing seriously, and that's it.
Word. Well, then what would that 5-year-old version, what would their advice be to you as this person who's learned to take things so seriously?
I don't know. I think my 5-year-old would tell me that there's more to live and there's more to explore, and there are things I can still do and a lot of things that I can still achieve even as at now. There are things I can still do. Yeah.
Word. So a lot of encouragement of like, keep going. Like, it's okay. There's lots of race to run. Yeah. So the 5-year-old version of myself would say, would tell me, the 5-year-old version of myself. And what would he tell me? I think the 5-year-old version, legitimately, I think the 5-year-old version of myself would be like floored. Like he would be like, oh my God, you're having such a huge adventure. Like, this is incredible. Like, you're doing all of this interesting and exciting shit. Like, I think he would just be like sort of blown away in a meaningful manner. But what he would remind me of, I think what he would probably remind me of is like to sing and dance more often. Like it's funny, as I'm describing this, like I'm remembering, my uncle, rest in peace, he used to play like the worst, like old school hip hop, like not even hip hop, but like the most like commercialized rap music, the Fat Boys. And he had this old boombox, this fucking ghetto blaster. And he would just like play the Fat Boys, and I would be this like little kid between 3 and 5, and I would just dance and fucking sing and make up like the wackest fucking rap songs you can possibly imagine. And so I think he would encourage me to like, don't worry about, just be less self-conscious.
Yeah, that's really nice.
I could dance more, I think, but yeah, I don't really do stuff like that anyway.
Yeah.
There
Dance,
we
man.
are.
Sing your song, man. We got button pushers in the house. Okay. Well, we'll get into our debrief then. So welcome back, gang. So that was our first exercise, our first liberating structure of the day, impromptu networking. And impromptu networking is just this series of one-on-one, 3 to be precise, interactions around the same question or prompt. And so my question to you as we debrief this structure is, what did interacting this way with this question at the center of these interactions, what did using this pattern make possible and help us to do that we might not have been able to do otherwise? And this is just a sort of popcorn thing. If you want to share in with your voice in the middle of the space, do so. If you're more comfortable using the chat, also great. But what did this structure make possible?
Renee, I can see you're talking, but I cannot hear you. Share vulnerabilities in the chat box.
Indeed. Indeed. Anybody else? Thank you, Renee.
Sure. I mean, Sacred Arc and I had totally different upbringings, which is really fun. I mean, like, couldn't be more different. So it's like, it's really, you know, it's good for a laugh. Like, oh yeah, no, you know, just totally different lives. Like, nah, man, like, you know, yeah, no. Sacred Arc had a very structured upbringing. I grew up with a bunch of hippies. You know, like, it was just, you know, like totally different side of it, just totally different. So it's really fun. You know, you're just like, oh yeah, it's nice.
Cool. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So we got to reveal more information. We got some deepening into the questions, sharing of vulnerabilities. And so, Wonka, can you unpack that? That's an interesting insight.
Yeah, that for the first person that I talked to, what I shared was what was on the top of my mind. But then when I continued sharing with people, I started realizing some things that I didn't thought in the first person, with the first person. So I could like bring back some more memories and like not only stay with the same thing and repeat the same thing with everyone, but to be able to go deeper with everyone in the activity.
Incredible, thank you. So we were able to get some more refinement or fidelity in our response as we kept going. That's great. So on the flip side of what the structure helps us do and makes possible, there's also a whole field of like perennial problems in communications that it helps us avoid. So if you think about the typical communication breakdowns that interacting in this way helped us to avoid, what were we able to prevent or interrupt by using this pattern?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wrote not having too much time to talk.
And so you got airtime, basically. That's what I think you're saying.
And also like the feeling of having a safe space.
Awesome. Anybody else? Meaningless chit chat. Tell me about it.
For me, what I felt was like I was trying to not give the same answer and trying to think more and like elaborate my answers. And as I was doing it, I could understand the way that I was treating myself, and sometimes like not realizing it until like the moment that I had to think about it.
Thank you. We've got some couple of more comments in the chat. So the avoiding of meaningless chit chat, and there was no adversarial nature to the interaction. So that's also very interesting. It's a hard question. What did we avoid? But thank you for considering it. And the last question to debrief this structure that I'll just offer you is, where do you have the agency, influence, and opportunity to make use of a pattern like this, of using 3 different short one-on-one conversations to explore the same topic, rather than getting into talky circle stuff, perhaps, that we normally get into. That one's here for you to consider, but think about it. It's an important aspect of the game. And so that was our first pattern. And so for our second pattern, we're going to jump into a different structure called impromptu networking. Or no, not impromptu. We just did impromptu. We're now going to jump into appreciative interviews. And I'm going to show you a poorly formatted visual that, not poorly, it's analog, it's low fidelity intentionally. That's it. This is perfectly on point with the brand that I bring. And so for for appreciative interviews, what I'm going to invite you to do is to tell the story of a conflict that worked out better than expected. And by better than expected, I mean it didn't turn into an absolute crisis the way your brain probably told you to. So tell your partner a story about a conflict that worked out better than you expected. And how did you feel, particularly in the beginning, middle, and end of that story? And to take note of what made that relative success possible. And once you tell that story in this one-on-one interaction, I'm going to bring us into some small groups of 4. And the invitation there is, rather than regurgitate your story, tell your partner's story to this new pair of people that you're going to join this space with. And your partner will tell your story, and see if you can find any particular overlaps. Again, what patterns, conditions, assets tend to support, conflict or crises going better than expected. See if we can find any principles that we might be able to carry out into the future. So again, first a one-on-one interaction with regards to our story, and I'll give you a minute or 2 to reflect on that. Then we'll jump into a small group interaction with some 4s, and then we'll come back together to compare notes all together. So does anybody have questions about the procedure that we're going to go through with appreciative interviews? Well, it sounds like we are clear enough for now and safe enough to get started. So just take a minute and think about a story about a time when the conflict went better than expected.
Sorry, I have a question to ask. I'm very sorry for putting you. I wanted to ask if the story has to be like on what exactly, does it have to like cover anything? I'm kind of new here. I noticed that I went through the old stuff, and I just wanted to like get a better understanding. I'm so sorry for cutting you.
In response to your question, I would just say tell any story that is personal to your experience. So any story about a conflict that didn't turn into total ostracization from society. And the way my brain works is every conflict leads to me dying dead alone in a ditch. So any conflict where that didn't happen, just tell that story and see if you can find any patterns between the stories of yourself and your partner.
All right, thank you.
All right, and now you'll be transported into a one-on-one space to tell and exchange your story. Mati, I'm going to transport you to have a sit down with Juan. Enjoy.
Okay, sorry, I didn't get that. Could you try?
You should have received an invitation to join room, breakout room
Okay.
1.
I think the same. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So I'm going to switch gears pretty hard for you guys. But since we do have a little bit of time, I'm going to leave an artifact of some thinking about liberating structures for you guys for this recording. So liberating structures are a toolkit of different social technologies, communication technologies that help to organize attention and especially shared time together. So if you think about meetings, most meetings are horrible and they just don't feel awesome. And that is typically because we don't really know what we're doing. Like we just show up to a meeting, we do whatever we do, we get whatever we get. And that's usually not any particular great outcome. You'll probably notice that like better than bad meetings tend to have an agenda, right? Some laundry list of different topics and subject matter that we hope to cover. And that is great because it helps give us a checklist of like, okay, first we got subject matter A, B, C, and D. We can sort of work through that like a checklist and just, give ourselves an opportunity to address or treat all of those topics. That's better than bad, but still not particularly awesome because chances are we're addressing or we're treating all of those different topics, usually like they're the same thing. And more often than not, they are not. Usually subject matter A here is very different than subject matter B, C, and D. A might be making a decision, B might be collecting information input, C might be then the answer to or revealing the correct question that we need to ask to make a plan about something. And usually we just use what are called the sort of 5 Stone Age technologies when it comes to communication, because they've probably been with us since the Stone Age. First and foremost is some form of presentation. This mode that I'm in right now, while everybody else is in this interactive mode. So I'm just talking at you and you just get to listen. It can be valuable, but it's not super interactive and has a relatively low information throughput. In addition to the presentation, there's the status update. where we sort of go around in a circle and tell everybody what we're up to, and usually share a lot of not particularly relevant information with a lot of people so that some relevant information can get to where it needs to go. In addition to those two, we also have the middle of the road guy, which is the managed discussion. A managed discussion is like, when I, as the discussion host or the chairman of the meeting, sort of throw the microphone around and go, hey, Jason, tell me about this. Sally, how did that thing go? I sort of put people on the spotlight. It's all right, but again, relatively low information throughput if we have 30 people in the meeting. In addition to the managed discussion, we also have the themed brainstorm. And this is kind of, the throw spaghetti at the wall. Hey, what are all the wild ideas that we have that is just relatively chaotic and has its own thing. In addition to the themed brainstorm, we also have the most commonly used structure that organizes time and shared attention, which is the goat rodeo, the unstructured group conversation, where the loudest person in the room dominates all the airspace and everybody else, just tries to get a word in edgewise or does their best to not become a target. And so usually we're using that one, the unstructured group discussion, to handle all of these different subject matters, these different topics, and to treat them in our meetings. But we are, like we said, we have different topics. We have decision making, we have gathering information, we have revealing questions, we have planning. Each one of these activities actually would do well to have a very different approach to how we organize the conversation. And liberating structures, instead of offering us 5 Stone Age tools, offer us 33 cutting edge tools based out of the leading edge of complexity science that can help arrange our time and shared attention to address those topics. That way, for something like decision making, I can use 2510's crowdsourcing. To reveal information, I can use something like shift and share that gets much more engagement. For revealing questions, I can use a pattern like wicked questions to help reveal the paradoxical, relationships between 2 qualities that we want or don't want. For that planning, I can use some tool, for example, like eco-cycle planning, to think about the flow of my activities and which activities I might want to might be gunked up and need help moving, so to speak. So this is basically the offer of liberating structures, that instead of using the same 5 Stone Age tools for all of your agenda topics, pick one out of 33 that is more appropriate to the subject matter you're trying to treat or address. That gives you much more mindfulness about and consciousness that you can bring to bear about how you address subject matter. And that can improve the probability that you can successfully treat that topic. So picking one of those 5 tools might be able to, but you're actually able to succeed despite the fact that you're using pretty poor tooling. Whereas if you can grab an appropriate tool, it just tilts the whole playing field in your favor and gives you a higher probability of success. So that's why you should learn, practice, and use liberating structures. Boom, shakalaka. Welcome back, gang. So we find ourselves in a little bit of an odd scenario with an uneven group, but have no fear, have no fear, have no fear. We're just gonna shift a couple folks around and invite you guys into some yet different constellations. And Juan and Mati, I'll invite you to hang out with me here in the middle space as we continue to explore. This time we'll be shrinking our time box yet again. We're just going to have a few minutes to sort of share each other's stories and before we jump back into the all session. On your mark, get set, race. Oh, and Juan Carlos and Mati are also being invited into room 1. Just ignore the prompt. Or I'll follow you. Yeah, that'll work. I'll bring the party to you guys. So, Wonka, if you want to tell me about Mati's story, and Mati, if you want to tell me about Juan Carlos's story, I'll tell you about my story.
I can start, yes. Mati once had an argument with her boyfriend, and she said something that was hurtful for him. And at the start, she was in the position of saying that even if her boyfriend felt hurt, that her intention was not to hurt him, and that because of that, she wouldn't apologize to him because she didn't felt that what she said was hurtful. But then she started giving value to the other person's feelings and understanding that even if you say something without the intention of hurting the other person, if the other person feels hurt, you should recognize their feelings and apologize, because it's not only what you say, but the reaction that it causes. And that when you hurt someone, maybe you think that you're not hurting them, but if they feel hurt, you have to acknowledge that.
Thank you. And Mati, what lingers with you about Wonka's story?
Okay, so I once said he opened a restaurant with his brother, and they had some arguments, they had issues. So he had to pull out the whole thing, because he saw that the whole thing, the conflict between him and his brother was making the relationship he had with his brother was not going well, because of that conflict that they had together over the restaurant. So he decided to move out and allow his brother manage the restaurant by himself. And at the end of the day, he was able to realize that just from that decision of allowing his brother take over the restaurant, he was able to move on with his own life and make other decisions, and his relationship with his brother improved. And then because of that, he was able to move on to the Web3 space and find more opportunities for himself. So what I got from the old story is that sometimes we hold on to grudges and we don't let them go, but in reality, it just opens more opportunities for us one way. Yeah.
Thank you. So my story, what is a conflict that went better than expected? It's so funny. It was actually this evening. I'm going to tell this fresh hot one. I went out to dinner with my parents and my daughter and my son and my wife. And as little kids do, my son is 5 and my daughter is 3. And they just, at some point, my daughter went and melted down and was just like, I want pink ice cream. And I was just in like a full red alert, like, oh my God, I'm in a restaurant full of people and I'm going to be that person with that child. And so I just got into like a fully action oriented problem solving mode. And there was an ice cream parlor around the corner from the restaurant. And I was like, hey, I told the waiter, I'm gonna go get her some pink ice cream and we're gonna bring it back here and she's gonna eat it. And the front door staff was like, no, you can't bring food into here and eat it. It's just not gonna happen. And I was like, look, man, I don't really care, what the policy is. She wants pink ice cream. And if she doesn't get pink ice cream, like she's gonna scream everybody's faces off. And I don't want that to happen. You don't want that to happen. And they were like, oh, pink ice cream. Well, we have raspberry. Will that work? And I was like, it's pink, right? And they were like, yeah, cool. And so there was like this moment that I was just like, oh my God, I'm going to get into like a bare knuckle brawl with this person for like, of like getting in the way of my solution. But, what I noticed is like this through line in all of these stories is that it's so much more about the feeling that is in like this conflict with my significant other and how they feel about what I said, or it's not about the how it is between me and my brother and the content of what is in between us and causing friction. It is the sensation of there being some tension or friction between us. That feels like a very common thread. So addressing those feelings could be our sort of like a principle that we could take out of this conversation. Anything else you guys notice?
So how did the thing end? Did the raspberry ice cream work?
Oh no, of course not. Like she had the raspberry and then she didn't have whipped cream, and then she had whipped cream, but it was in the wrong place. Like there was it was just a time bomb. Eventually she passed out. All right, gang. And so this is where things get interesting. So if you haven't heard each other's stories, what are the common threads that have popped up in these conversations? What are the patterns, principles, or bits of information that you have seen overlap in each other's stories?
If I can start, I think that all the conflict changed when some kind of clarity was made, like when people reached an agreement on what they expected from each other. Am I right, Fintan?
Yeah, definitely a stream of compromise.
A stream of compromise. I also get some hints of like revealing information in Condensa. In our group, there was also a thread around like feeling and sensation being more significant than the facts of the conflict itself. So these overlaps in our stories start to offer us some amount of surface area that we might look for principles that we can use in order to help address conflict in others. Had we more time, this exercise usually wants to take about 40 minutes to give ourselves time to relax and tell stories into it, reveal these principles. That being said, we've got a glimmer of what this pattern is used for. We've done 2 moves actually in one, 1, 2, 4, all. So we've went from 1 minute of silent reflection into this brief interaction, or this interaction with one other person, into a small group interaction, and then bringing information into the shared space. And at the same time, we've also explored this sort of invitation around appreciative interviews. Tell a story about X. So using both of these structures, what did you notice it made possible?
I think it was beautiful to hear other person like telling your conflict, because it's when other person talks about it, it sounds less relevant than what you thought when you were telling it.
So the experience of hearing another person tell your story did something that changed your relationship to it. Anybody else?
Also, the fact that you need to report the other person's story makes you way more focused on listening.
Totally. So not only are we more focused on listening, but we're also avoiding like checking our Discord at the same time. Like, yeah, totally. Thank you. Anybody else?
I think it also allowed to reflect on the reactions that we'd had in the conflict, if they were good, if they were bad. But also that a conflict is like a process that has a start, a medium point, and an end, or a transformation. And that sometimes when mostly at the start, we think that there will be no solution. Also in the middle, we can think that, but yes, as Paolo said, when clarity starts arising, maybe we can unleash the knot and have like a conclusion for that situation.
Untangle the knot, indeed. Well, gang, this has been the briefest of introduction into the surprising power of liberating structures. Today, we've played with 3 different patterns: impromptu networking, 1, 2, 4 all, and appreciative interviews. There are more, so many more. These are 3 of a toolkit of 33 different patterns to help organize shared time, attention, and energy. My name has been Jeremy Akers, and I'm happy to be here. We're in service representing GravityDAO and the Wise Crowds gang. Come hang out with us and learn, grow, and you can find me in the future. And Candenza, you had some practical information that you wanted to drop on folks.
Yep, I am sharing my screen. I don't know if you can see it. Yes. Okay. So first of all, I would like to thank Jeremy for the session. It was really interesting, especially the part on conflict, and I think that we can sharpen it and use it to raise awareness on the importance of sharing conflict stories and get engaged in conflict in Aragon. Second, get your POAP. I will send you the POAPs through direct message on Discord. I wrote down all the participants. I need the Discord handle of Mati Faith because I don't have it. So if you can write it in the chat, please, I will take notes. Last one, I would like to remind you of the next event that's going to be tomorrow with Jeremy again, but we're going to work on 3 different structures. And Jeremy, would you like to give us like a 1-minute introduction on what we're going to do?
Yeah, that will be a concept that we call the Think Slow Dojo. So what we'll be focusing much more is on how to activate slow, effortful, conscious awareness and attention with each other, which is an incredible skill for anything that you want to do in life, let alone when shit gets hot in conflict zones. You might notice that skill, having strong muscle in that skill set, is extraordinarily high value.
Sounds nice. Okay, so we hope to see you tomorrow as well. Otherwise, the session will be recorded and will be posted in the umbrella Notion in the section Conflict Resolution Workshop, where you can find all the slides on the recordings of all the workshop in the series. I guess we're done. I would like to thank everybody for being here, and have a lovely evening, afternoon, morning, according on your time zone.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Everyone, see you
Yes.
tomorrow.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Remy.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Okay.